Hi, friends, and welcome to Only Green. Today we have with us Ms. Puja Mitra, a conservation cum social entrepreneur with MSc in Biodiversity, Conservation and Management from the University of Oxford and is a Commonwealth Scholar during the year 2008-9. She is the recipient of Sanctuary Nature Foundation Wildlife Service Award 2018 and currently lives and works in Goa as founder director of Terra Conscious, a conservation oriented social enterprise focusing on responsible travel and marine conservation outreach. In just 2 years since its inception, Terra Conscious has been awarded as runners up in the category of Best Wildlife and Tourism Initiative by the prestigious TOF Tigers Awards and featured in media platforms such as the BBC, Nat Geo Traveler, The Better India, Outlook Traveler, and others. Welcome, Puja, to Oli Green.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's first begin with how you got hooked on to the conservation and your love for animals, wild animals, and such things, especially the marine animals.
So I actually grew up in Bangalore, and I didn't have that much exposure to the coast, apart from maybe when we visited on vacations. So I didn't know much about marine. So my love for wildlife and for animals actually started from volunteering with local organizations in Bangalore itself. The working on like animal welfare, dog rescue. The regular things that happen in the urban space. And this was an organization called Compassion Unlimited Plus Action, and they at the time also started a wildlife sister organization called Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation, and they started working on captive elephant welfare, and that is what really piqued my interest, because I realized then that there was such a let's say interesting connect between livelihoods, between culture and tradition, and then actually the biological needs of an animal, which people may not understand. And you may think it's good to keep an animal like that in captivity, and you're used to seeing it, but as we understand more about these animals, we know that there are problems and they have to be looked at in a holistic manner. So that kind of started my interest in this, and I thought, okay, but even then, I think even at that time, conservation, sustainability wasn't such a big topic as it is today. I think when I was growing up in school and looking at university, and that time it was more about these are things people do on the side, or it's their hobby or something, but people are getting more into the mainstream work. So just like everybody else, I also studied sociology, economics. I thought, okay, I wanted to always, I liked creating awareness about these things. I like to write and speak about things that interest me. So I actually thought I would be an environmental journalist, and I studied media in my undergrad, and I thought that's what I'll do. I'll write about these things. But through this work, and then I got the opportunity to go and work as a media sort of an editorial intern with an organization in Assam. And I'd never been to that part of the country, and there people were greatly affected in the region where we worked, Sonitpur district. It was an organization called Assam Hati Project, and they were working on elephant conflict. So, villagers affected by elephants raiding crops. When I stayed on the ground there, I realized that it was so complex. And coming from an urban area, we were so disconnected from the realities that people are facing at the grassroots level, where we always look at animals with a romanticized nature if we are not actually engaged with them. So when we watch an elephant or a whale or dolphin or something on the television or in a documentary, we're so fascinated and we think, oh, people should just care for them, and why is there so much problem? But when you're actually there and you see people with handkerchief sized fields, whole year's crop is gone in one night when the animal has eaten it or crossed over it, and you see the pressure that urban development is putting, which is actually pushing. I mean, where does all our wood and everything come from? Who is it coming for? It's coming for the urban dweller. And that deforestation and the pressure on the local community to survive and coexist with these big animals, so it really opened my eyes to all of this. And that's when I realized that I wanted to really spend my life working on this intersectionality of these issues, that there is a human dimension, there is a wildlife dimension, there is an environmental dimension, and unless you address all of it in an integrated manner, you can't really come up with solutions which are sustainable. So that's kind of like where my whole interest in wildlife conservation started. But from there, I got a chance to work on this Dolphin Campaign, which was started by the Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organizations, headquartered in Delhi. And the background to that is, India was suddenly seeing a lot of disposable income. This is almost 8 years old campaign. And people were traveling and they're doing different things. They want different things. And the government also was starting to push a lot of different ideas around how to promote tourism and, create options. And they had planned six dolphin circuses in India: one in Delhi, one in Kochi, one in Surat, one in Goa, one in Chennai, and a couple of other destinations. And these were modeled on the kind of, Sea World. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you have these captive facilities in Singapore and America and Europe, China, basically in most countries in the world will have something like that, where they capture or breed in captivity dolphins and whales, and they train them. So these are intelligent mammals. They have a lot of capacity to understand, and they use a very cruel system called operant conditioning, where you basically withhold food. So if they don't do a trick or they don't do something, they don't get their food. And that's how they train them to jump through hoops or dance in the sense they stand on their fins and they do all those things, and they let people touch them and ride on them. And then people go and see this because people don't know, so they think, oh, this is very entertaining and it's a nice activity. So India was also planning like this. And but by this time, by the time India got onto the bandwagon of wanting to do this, a lot of global research was already available to show that marine mammals do very badly in captivity. Because in the wild, they see that we have 93 species of marine mammals found identified globally, and that consists of whales, dolphins, and porpoises. You have freshwater and you have marine. And India is home to 23 of such species, and we find them on our coastline, both on the west, east, and the south coast. And we are a peninsula, right? We have 7,000 square kilometer of coastline. But what I remember of my own growing up, that most of the conversation was always around elephant, tiger, forest. And most of us are easily sensitized now today. We know about why forests are important, why trees are important, why all why tiger is protected, elephant is protected. But if you ask somebody about oceans in India, we may not be able to answer very well about what marine animals are found, or are they protected or not, or why are oceans important. So these are the kind of things we started facing when we were running the campaign, that we had to literally, because a lot of people turned around and said, does India even have dolphins? And we said, yes, it does. It has dolphins and they are protected. And and if you put them in captivity, of course, we can't capture in India, so we would have been buying from other countries. Then we are going to be in we would just be perpetuating this cruelty of an animal that can swim 100 kilometers in a day in the wild. You're catching it and putting it in a sterile swimming pool, basically. So when I did this campaign, I got so exposed to the emotional and social intelligence of dolphins. Like, they are amazing creatures. If you just look at the species that we already know of, which are well studied, like the bottlenose, dolphins have names for each other. Each one has a dedicated signature click or whistle, which is assigned to it at birth. So they have self awareness. And in fact, some of the biggest researchers in the world who used to study them in captivity turned around and said it's unethical to do it, because they did something which is called the mirror test. That's how you test intelligence. So they put a mirror in the pool, and and they painted a cross under the dolphin's flipper like this, where it couldn't see it. The dolphin swam up to the mirror and lifted its flipper to see what was put on it, which means you have awareness that what I'm seeing in the mirror is me, and a sense of self. And an animal that we used to think only primates and higher order mammals have that awareness, but people realized that even the marine mammals had that awareness. And then globally there was such a outrage saying, okay, then how can we do this to an animal that has such a complex social, physical dimension? Why should we do this? So when I ran that campaign, I realized that A, there was not enough awareness about India's marine diversity. B, that the government was going to push lots of tourism and other livelihood, coastal livelihood related issues, because it has to, people need income and they all development. And there are ideas that people have. So if you don't come up with alternates, or you don't come up with how to make these things more sustainable, just saying don't do this and don't do that is only the first part, right? After that, the question is, okay, then what do we do? How do we employ people? How do we boost things? So then that became a question that became very interesting also to look at in the context of conservation. How do you reconcile the goals of conservation and development, especially for a developing country where so many people have to come out of poverty and there are so many issues. So though that kind of like really directed my attention towards the oceans and coast this campaign. And because I was already headquartered in Goa, the campaign was being run from there. That's when I turned my attention to the local issues. And my husband's a dive instructor; he's a scuba diving instructor. So he was diving every day, and he was telling me that I can see a lot of trash underwater. I can see some of the corals are broken. I can see that boats are out there following these dolphins. And so we went on one of the dolphin trips to see how it was being done, and we found. To our amazement, that dolphin watching is classified as a water sport
Oh,
in the Goa state legislature. It's not even looked under the tourism department.
cool.
It's considered as water sports because it started so organically. And, there were no rules and no regulations. So, like all these issues as they emerged, and what I had experienced in Assam with the elephant conflict issue, I realized that the themes can be like the situation can be different. It can be coastal livelihood or it can be your farming livelihood, but the issues are the same. It's lack of awareness, it's lack of regulation, and it's people's dependence on these ecosystems. It's inequity in the system in terms of who gets support and who doesn't. And a lot of split narratives around conservation. So all these things became very important for me to want to work on. And I'm not saying that one has the answers to all of this. They're very complex issues, and I think we can all spend our lives trying to figure out what's the best way. But yeah, to that's kind of like in
Kind
a
of the beginning.
roundabout way, yeah, that I
So we
got
started.
into marine
Okay, but
conservation.
then one of your talks I had heard, no blue, no green. This I think you said it spontaneously, or was that a slogan that you had coined over the years? I'm not really
No,
sure, but
it's not
then
my slogan. I
okay,
was actually paraphrasing, Dr. Sylvia Earle. She's a very well-known marine explorer and Nat Geo explorer, researcher, and ocean activist. And women are anyway few and far between in almost all the fields. And at her time, when she started, she was one of the first. She was pioneering, very inspiring person. And she had said this thing that no water, no life, no blue, no green. And it really resonated with me because if you think about it, our planet is three-fourths water, right? And it is the blue lungs of the planet, our oceans. It drives our climate. It gives 50% of our oxygen comes from oceans. And it's a carbon sink. It supports livelihoods. It supports so much biodiversity. And of course, if sea levels rise, ultimately we are all floating on 7 pieces of land. Entire human existence is on 7 pieces of land, right? Continents that are
correct.
floating on so much water. And we barely know our oceans. In fact, we probably studied space better than we have studied our own ocean. So if we lose our ocean health, if we end up impacting it like we are with plastic and pollution and climate change, if we end up damaging our oceanic ecosystem to the point of no return, and we still haven't understood enough about what those changes might mean, how it will impact people living on the land. Um, and we're already seeing increasing, cyclonic activity. We're seeing weather disasters happening every year. It's only getting worse. So it's very obvious that if you don't sustain your blue, your oceans, you will not be able to sustain your green.
Green. Okay.
Your rainfall is driven by your
Because
oceans as
when
well.
in our channel we always say let's make the world greener. But then for me it was when I heard that it was a sudden change. I mean, if there is no
Yeah,
blue, there is no green at all.
yeah. So you
It's a
need both.
very, yeah, it's a very good thought for me too. Now coming to your life or your activities as a marine life conservative, conservationist. I mean, can we have an insight of what exactly is marine life conservation?
Well, there are different ways to engage with it, right? So there are people who are ecologists and who are researching species themselves, and they're looking at, what is affecting them and how do they survive, all of that. But I was very interested in communities that depend on marine ecosystems and marine species. And I was very interested in looking at what, how, because we know from the science that a healthy ecosystem means a healthy biodiversity has to exist. For example, of the dolphin is top of the food chain. It plays the same role in the ocean ecosystem as a tiger plays in the forest ecosystem, in the terrestrial ecosystem.
Okay.
So it maintains a balance. So let's say in the forest, if you don't have predators, after some time, all the herbivores will multiply so much that they will finish up all the plant matter, and they will not give any time for the plant matter to revive, and they'll start to starve, and then they'll start to disappear, and when they disappear, animals that depend on them will disappear, and like that you'll have what they call in the jargon is called trophic cascade. So basically every level of your ecosystem chain starts getting affected, and ultimately humans cannot still produce your own oxygen, you can't produce your own water, and you can't produce your own food, right? You depend on natural ecosystems to do that. So once you start losing all those natural systems and they can no longer absorb carbon or release oxygen, or you can't grow your food, or you can't get fresh water, then your survivability is affected. So that's the same thing which happens in the ocean, that if our dolphins or our top layer of species disappear, then the bottom layer of species will proliferate, and then after some time there won't be enough food for them, so they'll start to disappear, and then like a cascade effect, livelihoods that depend on it will get affected, people will get pushed into poverty. So it became very clear that if we were to talk about conservation in the marine space and coastal space, that we could not ever talk about it without talking about the people who are dependent on it. And I think that is true of any space. I think this idea of fortress conservation, where we cut off nature and we fence it and we try to protect it and we live on the outside, is a very Western notion. It's something we have adopted. It's not something that is intrinsic to our culture. Because if you look at our cultural heritage around India, you look at the tribal communities, you look at our, even the way we think about nature and our relationship with nature, we have been shaping and influencing the natural world for thousands of years. And we have an understanding that humans are part of that landscape and seascape. So the way to protect it is not to imagine it without people, but it's to change the way we exist within it, the way we relate to it. We've somehow lost that relationship, right? We've gone away and we've become concretized in our thinking. And now we think human habitation means concrete and nature is something you leave outside and you go and visit it and you put a fence and you try to protect it. That's how it's worked in the land for so long. In oceans, where are you going to put the fence? Where are you going to tell the fish that, Acha, you belong to Goa coast, please don't swim towards Maharashtra coast? Or how are you going to tell the pollution that, oh, someone has thrown you in Oman, so please don't follow the current and reach Kerala because you not come from our side? You can't do that. You can't control water, right? So it's a very good symbol for how we all have to think like a global community. We all have to think like a global, national, and local community at all levels and work together. So that's really how I see myself as a conservationist. I don't see myself as a marine conservationist or particularly a marine wildlife conservator, any such sort of a tag. I see myself more as a concerned citizen who has been fortunate to experience certain things on the ground and get some training in how to deal with some of these issues. And then I've just learned so much in the years that I've worked from the people that I've worked with. And today, really, what we are trying to do in terms of, when you ask me, like, what do you do in marine conservation, we are basically trying to do three very simple things. We are saying if you depend on this ecosystem and this species for your livelihood, there has to be a better way to do it so that your livelihood doesn't end up damaging or hurting that environment, and you in turn have a better return on the effort that you're putting in. The second part is people need to change their relationship with nature, and they can only do that when they get to know it better. So for us, the effort is to introduce people to the oceans and to the coast, and for them to learn about what it is, so that people don't just come to a Goa and think, oh, it's a beach and I can just party and there's nothing beyond that. So changing that perception is the second part. And the third part is to liaise and advocate with the government, because there are a lot of policies which are outdated, or when they were framed, people didn't think about these issues, and now those policies have to evolve to reflect the need of today, and regulate or put in systems in place that will actually support conservation of this. So yeah, that's kind of like where our work is centered. It's looking at policy, it's looking at awareness, and it's looking at livelihoods.
Earlier in some of our interviews, we were talking to some people who are interested in bird watching.
Right.
There we talk about migration of birds from different lands coming into India on their way to some other part of the world. So is that the same phenomenon there in the marine species also? Migration?
Yes, not all. Like in India's case, we're lucky, we are fortunate. We have residential dolphin species. So, for example, the ones found off the coast of Goa or even Kerala are residential. They're the Indian Ocean humpback. But we do get visited by migrating sea turtles. So, the olive ridley comes from further away. The leatherback nests in Andamans used to nest in the mainland, but now nests in Andaman Islands. And they have been recorded going to Australia and Africa and then swimming back. So definitely that happens, and we are on the, because we got the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal, and the Indian Ocean. We do have migrating whales that pass by India. There's also a residential species family of. I wouldn't say family, residential species only is the right word, because now there are all these subspecies, and every year they come up with something different, so it's difficult to keep track. But there is the humpback whale in the Arabian Sea. There's a population of humpback whales which is residential. But that does not to say they only stay in one place. They move between India, Oman. They go towards Sri Lanka. So those are there, and we're still studying. Like there are fish that migrate and all that. But the sea turtle is the most symbolic of marine migration that comes to India.
But then in birding, I think there is a systematic or a scientific way of tagging it and following it
Yeah,
up wherever they go.
easier
Yeah.
to do it with
Do you
birds.
have a similar study done for marine species also?
I think for sea turtles, there has been some tagging work. I think Dakshin Foundation, which is another organization, they do tagging work of sea turtles. That's, I think, they've tagged in Andamans, and but I don't think for dolphins there is any tagging or whales from India side. But Oman has tagged some of these
Oh,
humpback whales. So interestingly, now there are global networks of researchers and ecologists who inform each other of their research, and they report together. So that is how people get to know, what's happening in this space. So a few years ago, we were alerted by the ecologist network in India that a humpback whale was coming from Oman side towards India, and she was tagged, and her journey was being studied. And when we alerted the networks with whom we work on the coast, that in case anybody spots this whale, they should let us know. So that actually happened. People did see her coming past India and going towards Sri Lanka. And there's so many there are bottlenose spinner dolphins. They may not migrate the whole globe. Certain populations might stay here, but they're all, I would just say that, like, we don't know enough about our oceans to really say who's using what space and how long do they stay here, how long do they stay there. Like, for example, green turtles don't come to nest in Goa, but we run a standing network in Goa, and we are getting so many green turtles washing up deceased on our beaches, or washing up injured. Now they have a feeding ground near Gujarat. So are they coming from there down to Goa? Like, we don't know, because India is also not spending money on marine research the way it could. And you would imagine that a peninsular country should be spending money on understanding and learning about its coast. But I think that conversation is only now sort of getting more center stage.
Even study on dolphins comes under CMFRA.
No, it will come. Well, it could if they would want to look at it. But for example, we have the National Institute of Oceanography, which is headquartered in Goa, and they are centrally funded. They have ships that go to Arctic and all and study, but they don't do marine mammal studies.
Okay.
And you have the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, and if you think the Wildlife Protection Act lists dolphins, whales, and porpoises as protected under Schedule 1, which means they come under the State Forest Department, who are the
Oh,
custodian of all wildlife in the state. So any state forest department can support studies, and central government can fund studies. The question is, they have not prioritized it till now, perhaps. And only now people are realizing, like when we started doing the standing network in Goa 4 years ago, it was born of the fact that a whale, basically it's a dwarf sperm whale, which is a deep water dwelling whale, and it washed up alive in South Goa on the Palolem beach, and it was very thin. and there were no protocols in place of what to do when a whale comes up. So all the tourists were crowding, and the lifeguards were. And Goa's fortunate; it's a premier tourism destination, so it has a lifeguard network, and
Okay.
that too, it's a private company that is on contract by the state tourism department to provide lifeguarding services. So it's the only state in the country right now which has got manpower manning the beach from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening, 365 days a year. So they were unfortunately there, pushed into dealing with this whale, and then the forest department came, and the forest department wasn't equipped because forest department is still studying syllabus from British time, where marine is not even in it. They
Okay.
learn forestry. So it's very sad. Like, you make a policy and you say, okay, your forest department, you are supposed to be in charge of marine creatures, but then you don't train them on and don't give them the equipment and the funding to do so. So how are they supposed to cope when such a situation arises? So because there was so much chaos, and then ultimately the animal was already too weak and ill and it did not survive, we then decided that we need to work with all these stakeholders and create a structured response network, because this can happen again, and if it happens again, we should know what to do and be guided by the correct expertise. So under the guidance of ecologists such as Dr. Dipani Sutaria, Dr. Mihir Sule, and these are all the known marine ecologists of India, we then went to the forest department and said, like, we should do this network. And Drishti is a very pioneering company, because it's not their job description. They're supposed to be guarding human lives. They don't have to take up
Right.
the wildlife part. But they said, no, okay, let's train all our lifeguards, because they had 600 boys on the course. So they said, let's train them. So we trained all of them, and now 4 years we've been running this network, and 450 incidents we have responded to.
Oh,
That's 100 animals every year, right? So, and it's been a mix: whale, dolphin, porpoise, sea turtles, seabirds, snakes. Snakes also started getting reported. Every time there'd be heavy rain, flooding, we'd get snake reports from the beach. And gradually it started creating this awareness, because in Goa, there was this understanding that sea turtles only come to Galjibag beach in the south and Morjim beach in the north. But our study from this stranding showed that turtles were coming to every beach of Goa. They were getting stranded on every beach, and even nests were being found in very highly touristy areas like Kalangut, Kandoli. Whales, we got deep water dolphins, like a spinner dolphin once, who came alive on the beach. Then finless porpoise, we got a pregnant dolphin. So, we found nets inside. Now there's an organization called Reef Watch, which also joined the network this year, and they're doing veterinary postmortems and things, and they found fishing nets inside some of the dolphin stomach. So that starts giving you an idea that, is this affecting them? Is it ghost nets? What kind of a thing? So it suddenly became a treasure trove of information that was being reported by citizens, by the lifeguards, and then other citizens, tourists started reporting, shacks started reporting. So it really showed us that there is so much happening on our coast, and we don't know. So these structured networks and things become very important.
roughly, how many varieties or how many types of dolphins will be there in Indian?
23 species of cetaceans we have. So marine mammals, whale, dolphin, and porpoise together is known as cetaceans. So I
Okay.
think there are about approximately, if I'm not wrong, 23 species that have been identified, of which in India we have river dolphin also. So like, you have your Gangetic dolphin, which is well known. It's also, I think, a national animal now. And we have the Indian Ocean humpback. Then we have finless porpoise. And then in little deeper waters, you get spinner dolphins, bottlenose dolphins. So there are different varieties that
So
are
what will
found
be
in
the
the.
what will be the lifespan of these dolphins?
See, for every species, it's different. So for Indian Ocean humpback, it's about 30-35 years, I think.
Okay.
And they live in very close family bond groups, so they have close social bonds with their family group, and they are very good river mouth hunters. And I think that's why they're so easily spotted, is because they come into the river mouths to hunt. And that's how this tourism industry has also grown around them, because they don't have to go too far to spot them. And but the standing shows us that, in fact, when I was in Goa, we had done when I started my work in Goa after the campaign, I joined World Wildlife Fund, and we had done a study supported by IUCN on impact of tourism on dolphins. And we found that dolphins were showing signs of stress because the tourist
Oh,
boats were chasing them. They were changing their path of travel every time a boat approached them. So that means they were not comfortable in the way the boats were operating around them. So it became very important that all that is addressed.
Coming to your venture, your initiative, Terra Conscious. Uh, we've been talking a lot about sustainable tourism, eco-tourism, all these things. I mean, when I read through your this thing, it was more of ethical tourism. Can you explain as to how Terra Conscious works? What are the main areas of operation? And also, like you've been talking about public local participation.
Yeah.
Can you touch upon all these aspects, please?
So basically, when I was working with World Wildlife Fund, we did this study, and at the time, the outcome of the study, because it showed us that there was three main gaps. One, that the boat owners and drivers were not trained in how to operate the boat. So globally, dolphin and whale watching is a $1 billion industry, and in countries like the West, it's very well regulated, and there are proper training that people have to go through to even conduct activities like this. And there are rules on how boats can work around marine mammals. And these rules are pretty simple. It's no chasing, no surrounding, always stay parallel to the animal, do not cut its path of travel, things like that. Now, in India, we have dolphin watching, but we don't have the rules, and we don't have the training, and we also have the very poor price point. So globally, like even in Sri Lanka, whale watching is at least 3,000 rupees per head. In other countries, you'll be paying at least $38-40 upwards. In Goa, it's 300 to 500 rupees per head.
Oh,
Now when you see, maybe 10-15 years ago, when the industry organically began, and people were, some fishermen may have been requested by a tourist that please take me out on the boat, and they have seen the dolphin and they've got a little extra money. But over the years, people have commercialized it. They have actually invested in boats, and they are conducting it like a, they call it dolphin watching trip, and the government is giving them a license to do it. But the price point hasn't changed, and over the years the petrol cost has gone up, the diesel cost has gone up, the boat licensing fees have gone up. Um, then obviously labor costs, maintaining all of that. So they are not earning enough from doing one trip. And then what happens is, you want to do volume, you want to add alcohol, you want to allow people to dance on the boat, charge extra for all those things. Ultimately, it stops being a wildlife experience and it becomes like this party experience where the dolphin happens to be incidental to it. So when we were doing this WWF work, we did an initial training for 40 boat operators on ethical, on these guidelines. How do you operate, and trying to sensitize them and saying that, look, your trip has to become a better experience. It has to be done, and these are Schedule 1 animals. You harming them is a crime against under the act. So you have to be sensitive to how you're dealing with it. And people, we were interviewing tourists, and they were saying that yes, of course, we would like to know more about the animal. We don't know, nobody says anything, because you basically sit on the boat and then the boat starts and then they say, oh, that's a dolphin, and you come back. So you have no, your understanding of the animal, your knowledge has remained zero from start to end. So you are no better informed, which is not the case in other places where this is being done. So that's when we asked the boat operators, and I had a conversation with them, and I said that, okay, what's happening? Why are you finding it difficult to follow these rules? What are the challenges you are facing? And they said, look, first of all, there are too many boats out on the water. Second of all, we do not earn enough from what we do. We have to do multiple trips. We have to add some perks here and there, and otherwise people are not happy. And they also have they also started this thing where if you don't show the dolphin, you give the money back to the
oh,
customer. So people sometimes would get aggressive and start to hit the driver and all if they never saw it. Now in a wildlife experience, you cannot guarantee that every time you will see something. So it was a very stressful way they were working, and they were very unhappy with the outcomes of what they were doing. And they knew that with the pollution and the chasing and everything, the animal is also getting affected. And they would say hardly stays around. When we were younger, they would be in the bay the whole day. Now when the boats start coming, they quickly disappear somewhere. They don't stay there. Very difficult for us. How do we, run a business? So that's when we started Terra Conscious. We said, okay, fine, let's start a business where we will do the trip in partnership with them, because unless they see that, and even we should be sure that what we are recommending actually works. Because sometimes from a privileged position, one can suggest something and then we don't have the accountability on whether our recommendation actually works or doesn't work. It's very easy to say, let's become sustainable, let's become eco, and let's become this and that. But is a person Is there an audience? Are they willing to pay more? Are they willing to align themselves? Are you able to make your business feasible? So these are all questions we could not answer unless we were doing it alongside. So we became their marketing and knowledge partner, and they were contributing their boats and their skills in actually operating the boats. And we started like this, and we changed the price from 300, 500 to 2,500, and we changed the trip from a 45-minute trip to 2.5 hours, because we said wildlife watching needs time and patience. If you try to finish in 40 minutes, then the pressure is on the boat driver to show something in 40 minutes, and people's expectation has to be managed. So we are fortunate, we had access, as privileged people in this country. There is such a disparity in who can access social media, who can access internet. So it's very easy to go and do a workshop and train boat operators. Aap ab ethical you become. How are they going to reach the customer? You're not made internet accessible to them. You've not trained them on branding and entrepreneurship, and they're all business operators at the end of the day. But we don't look at them like that. So we wanted to change all that. So we said, okay, we asked them, what support do you need? They said, please find us the customers who are going to appreciate a trip like this, who are going to pay for it. And we are happy to then follow the rules and do it according to how you are suggesting. And let's see how it goes. So we started this in 2017, and it did very well. And people started reaching out to us, hotels started reaching out to us, people started writing about it and saying that this is the right way to watch, and we learned so much, we enjoyed it. And because we weren't chasing the dolphin and we were observing with respect, the animal also continued doing its normal behavior of foraging or whatever it was doing in that moment, and not running away. So people got to experience it better. And the boat operators also began giving us feedback saying we are saving petrol because we are not chasing. So we are switched off most of the time. So it was inadvertently becoming a low carbon footprint also, because the engine wasn't on all the time. And they said, we feel happy, we feel relaxed, we feel less stressed. And then the customers are acknowledging us, they are respecting our work, because everybody wants dignity and everybody wants to be respected for what they do. And in India, we have this very poor habit that when we go abroad, we will say, oh, ship captain, and this cool guy took me dolphin watching. And when we come in India, we're like, treat them like labor. We're not respectful of their knowledge and their skills. And the other thing, we found that a lot of the drivers were migrant farmers. They were coming from drought-ridden areas where farming hadn't worked out, or weren't other opportunities, and they were looking at short-term earnings from a tourist season here. But they didn't have any instinctive understanding of this ecosystem because they're not from a coastal background.
Okay.
So all that teaching also had to happen. So then Terra Conscious became a hybrid of a company where it was doing impact work also, and it was doing the trips as well. So we started with the dolphin trip, then we added kayaking because some of our boat partners also invested in kayaks. Because one of the big issues in Goa is that the marine tourism period is for 180 days. It's only from October to March. After the sea is too rough. So what do you do in the off season? But kayaking in the rivers, in the mangroves, something you can do throughout the year. So some of them had diversified into that. And then we also thought, if you're educating people about oceans and about ocean life, then mangroves, rivers is just connected because all these ecosystems feed into each other. So let's start educating people about mangroves. And then from there, it went into cycling. And let's look at, so our model is always that we have a community partner. We don't own the cycle, we don't own the kayak, we don't own the boat. There's always a local partner who provides that. We have invested in learning about these ecosystems and making sure that we can convey to the consumer and really building a market. Because when I started, we were the only dolphin trip in India like this. And there was no demand for someone like us because no one knew that the way it was happening was wrong. So
Okay.
first you had to educate people and say chasing is wrong, so this trip doesn't chase. So to first explain why chasing is wrong, or why surrounding the animal is wrong, or why going too close to it is wrong. So there was a lot of build up that we had to do. So Terra Conscious, which is why Terra Conscious ended up doing outreach as well. So now I would say we are an enterprise that offers ethical travel, that offers education, environmental education. And through our work, because we've been able to impact livelihoods, our partners have been able to earn better. We've been able to influence the conversation around marine tourism in the state. So in all those ways, I think we've been able to create an impact. So that's what we do as an enterprise. I think I would not call I mean, sometimes people get confused. They think we are an NGO, but we are not. We are a for-profit enterprise. But yeah, our aim has always been that, we walk the talk. If we are saying that something like this can work, then we would like to actually show that it can work. And so far, it's been good.
But your activities are restricted to Goa or Goa, Orissa, other parts of India
At the
also?
moment, our bandwidth is Goa, but yeah, if there are opportunities to train operators or work with them in other parts of the country, then we would be open to that. I mean, we have talked about it with other operators because we do meet people who are conducting or know of similar issues in their states, and increasingly people do reach out to us, and they, if there are opportunities, definitely. But right now, even in Goa, we have not managed to reach all the operators because there's just so much to do. And we are a small enterprise, and we don't get funded that much or anything like that. So I'm constantly doing projects on the side and on the lookout for opportunities. But our travel has really become very interesting because a lot of people have come back to us and told us that they just didn't know. They've come to Goa so many times that they didn't know something like this was there, or they didn't know that this wasn't right, and this is a better way to do it. And now, before the pandemic, what was very heartening was so many of the boat operators approached us and they said that they all want to be part of this program, and they want to change the way they're doing things, which I think is great, because once people themselves see the benefit in doing the trip ethically or doing it more sustainably, then your battle is won already, because people are already ready to do it. And you see, nobody does this because they don't like the dolphin and they're just determined to damage the environment. And there's no, I would say that is restricted for the big corporations who know very well that mining or plastic production or whatever is harmful, and then you go and do it anyway. But for most people who are engaged directly with the environment at a very small scale, they are affected by a broken system, a system that doesn't equip them with the right skills, a system that doesn't provide them with the market linkage support they need, and a system that doesn't recognize their skills and reward it accordingly. See, you're from an architecture background. When you take a project, you expect to be paid something for your skills and your experience and your expertise. Taking a person on a boat is no less
Correct.
skillful. Someone's life is in your hands, right? If they don't know how to operate in that ecosystem they are doing, you are at risk. So that person cannot be paid something that is not aligned with their experience. So people also need to think, and a lot of my customers always tell me, like, oh, why is it so expensive? I said, you are spending on a coffee and a sandwich 500 rupees without thinking, right?
That's
You'll
right.
go out for a meal and you'll spend 1,000, 2,000 bucks without thinking. And this is a Schedule 1 endangered marine mammal. You are going on a boat. There is a person who has learned the skill of operating the boat, who has invested money in setting up the business. How can you do it at a price point that doesn't give them a return on their investment? So even us as consumers have to learn to value the right things, right? We'll spend money on things that, on some branded bag and t-shirt and whatnot, and then when it comes to our environment, we want it as cheap as possible. So that's not the right way, I think, because these things should be valued. And of course, we do get questioned that if you make it so expensive, it's not accessible to everyone. So I'm not saying that this is our model, it works for us. It's not that everybody has to offer it at this price point, or everyone has to do it in this way. People are free to do it in whatever price point and however they want to, but as long as they follow the basics, which doesn't end up harming the very thing they're dependent on. But at the same time, I feel like people should start to think about that everybody doesn't have, um, it's not your right to go and see the animal, right? I mean, it's a privilege to go and see it and to engage with it and to support someone's livelihood. So whatever the operator is charging and feels confident of charging, you should respect that and not beat them down, is would be my
Okay.
thing. So that's kind of like all the things we work on. Yeah.
Okay. Coming towards the last part of the conversation, uh, if you need to give a message to our viewers on conservation, whether it be terrestrial conservation or marine conservation, what could be that? How we need to respect the nature, be one with the nature, and how do we go about it? What is your message to the viewers?
I mean, I feel sometimes a bit, like I'm no one to give a message like that, because I'm myself struggling with sustainability. You see, all our lives, you and I are using laptops. That has an impact. We know how a laptop is made. We're using internet as an impact. I can't say any of us are living a life without impact, and we are all struggling to see how we can best, align ourselves with nature, and live in a responsible way. So I guess all I can share is my own understanding from the last so many years that I've worked in the space, is that be mindful, be mindful of any space that you are visiting. Be aware that it's not only what is projected and marketed, but it is a home to somebody. There is a local community, there is a local culture, there are local wildlife ecosystems. So make the effort to get to know all of that. Make the effort to engage with those aspects more than expecting the same old copy paste thing. If you're going to go everywhere and want Domino's and KFC and some dance party, then you are losing the opportunity to really discover the wonderful diversity that our country can offer. And I think that way Kerala has done such an amazing job of promoting itself as what it is. People never mistake what the culture of the place is. They will not come to Kerala and say, "Oh, I will dance party here," because there is an understanding of what it is. Whereas if you come to Goa, you may not really know what you're actually coming to experience there of the local this thing. So I think
Correct.
I would say be mindful of any destination you visit and be responsible in your choices. Every day we make choices, and we think about where we spend our money, where we spend our time. So yeah, be conscious about your choices. Be conscious about how you are doing anything, any decision, and be respectful. Because just because someone is doing something you don't know, it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. And we need to look at value in every type of occupation that is around us, whether somebody is a lifeguard, or somebody is a boat operator, or somebody's a vendor coming to your home and selling something, or somebody's a IT tech person. I think we need to respect all occupations and value them accordingly. So I would say and be respectful, be responsible in your choices, and be mindful. These would be my three takeaways.
Thank you, Pooja, for
Thank
that
you for this.
1 hour of great trip through